Show you the mistake we made.
I made.
We made.
I'll take I.
Well, I didn't tell you about it because I didn't think about it.
Oh,
When it pops up,
mhm.
eat it.
Got it. Okay, that creates your echo.
Yeah, because this is about 30 seconds behind, and that's where that 30
That's where-
second delay was coming from. And the audio out of here comes out of that speaker, and it creates this endless loop.
Gotcha.
So now you can just go back over to here, and for the purpose of the meeting,
Yeah, because we don't need it shown.
chuck it under here. And yeah,
Beautiful.
good.
Okay.
So, Fox I Woodard for this finally has a tracking number.
Oh, really?
Hey, you know, there's Pelican cases, you can put guns and everything else in it, has a remote. Yeah, finally, because they're made in China. Even though they're high quality, they're manufactured in China, so they've been back with. So, they don't have this in the kit. The monitor will still be separate.
Right.
But basically, you'll have this and this inset in the phone, and this laying on its side. So you get to someplace, you open up the case, flip the door all the way open, pull the camera out, set it up, run a cord out, plug it in.
There you go. Thanks.
That would be intended all along. Oh, and the, stuff for the, network upgrade, the wall.
Oh,
Everything is in, including the server on Vimeo. The only thing that I'm waiting on right now is the big field rack cabinet. Coming spring. So there's never, you know, get here, I get here. But I'm expecting it sometime that week or so.
thank you, Bill.
Yeah. Sure, coming.
No, because they got away from COVID now. So,
Are they still just doing the left half, or do they have to carry it?
how can I do the whole thing? What we're gonna do now is this one.
You know, they at least break out the panel around the chimney in the center of the ring. Man, I'd be clean. But, you know, that crap. If they tear that off and actually stuff around that. I can do that. Yeah. Even if you did one side.
Hey, Jim.
Good evening, Mr. County Manager.
How are you, sir?
I'm well. Question, how are you? Operating function there, operating question.
You know, I thought when I retired from police work, I knew my full crew got away, but
No.
no.
I don't have other things.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
You're taking what you missed, so,
I know Meredith doesn't have everything. Meredith, yeah, everything. You get your shot.
That's amazing. I'm a socialist. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's so well
And on town hall.
Of course,
We have a social.
yeah, that one was already done.
Yeah. Sure. Have something done. Then. Carol, first over. PhD.
how nice it was. Yeah, we have to that, well, the end of the month, you know, so.
Yeah, my was the last year.
I bet that we gotta research.
Yeah.
The big sign outside. I know. She's doing it forever. I got her today. They're there for it. Yeah, no doubt.
Maybe they just eliminated Section 9 and 12. We don't have one, two. That's the name. Yeah, we don't have all that.
Every day is like, yeah, I can't believe it, read it. I got her in, she did data. So be there for that. Last week I thought, I mean, it was.
Even though it's broken down. Did they have a phone or a box? She walked out 2 days later.
And then she walked out.
She walked out of the house. She refused to put on the garment.
So did mine. Mine didn't say anything.
She refused to put on the garment.
It just gets worse and worse and worse.
She's being medevac to Jefferson.
I got this whole when I was down in the Air Force. And being there 4 hours is hard.
You gotta be like, I can't now.
Yeah, I went from the third hot because this man is actually close. I want to party that one.
Yeah, look.
It was amazing. Good. Every time I turned around, there was another friend. They kept coming in, he kept bringing them in.
Oh,
So I didn't know they were coming. So, because like,
that's great. Well, I'm glad you're doing better.
thank you.
Yeah.
Very well.
Yep, her surgeon told me that once the doctor's like, he had something changed it. And she was there.
Here. I know, I got some too.
Yeah, that's not.
Oh, there, it was a French call.
Yeah.
They're like, all the rooms are fried.
Yeah.
And they look like good numbers.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, good line.
Good luck.
When we first started, a friend of mine, and they came over to pay help with the car. And they said, here's, they did, they said, they can't. And I said, insurance company. And one year, came in and said, oh, we're taking them to the ER. They wheeled them out, they covered them up, wheeled them out, and they right to the ER. They said, no problem, we did it all. She said, no way, we're gonna let this patient suffer. So, and she said, it's all right now. I was impressed. Very good. I've heard they're very good. I wish they'd make some milk down. I wish they'd go to Jefferson. They're so efficient. I got pretty sure. Did they really get her?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she was trying to, she was leaving.
I left the meeting last month. Yeah, I really apologize. I ended up in ER about 2 hours later.
I was in here.
Yeah, so, but they had me diagnosed and out. Like,
Great.
yeah.
It's a place to go, yeah.
I had a bursitis in my elbow that got infected. And I was sitting here, minute by minute, like, with a raging fever, you get from it. That's it. From that.
Fun to get away.
Oh, is it?
Better than the alternative. He's still really. Hey, Dale. Dave, make a copy. You got to run it down.
As soon as Dave gets back, we'll get started. You got to run the town hall and make a couple copies.
Yeah.
He's making copies of it.
Yeah.
He's never gonna miss a copy. That's what we're waiting on. I think she's coming till Steve's at 7, she's gonna be here the whole week. She'll be here, just be a little bit late.
Apparently Chase did it. Has anyone let them know on Zoom? There were two people that are watching the Zoom. They're wondering what's going on.
I'll be checking when you get back.
Now, Stewart says they're going to be fine with the zoning control system, okay? Now, the second page is giving us a page for automation control for.
I think I see what's going on. You know what they're supposed to do is, we hold it. I guess that's not all.
No, that's not. All right, until we get some more information and feedback from the businesses around.
And what I read on the thing that somebody posted on Facebook or something like that.
Yeah, we gotta tweak it on that. So we pulled it off, so we had that.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, good evening, everyone. Apologize for getting started late. We had to get some copies made for the ordinance that's on the agenda this evening. So we'll go ahead and get started. Call the meeting to order. Today is Monday, March 15th. Location Delaware City Fire Hall, 6:30 p.m. Please stand for the pledge. I All right, Brittany's running a little bit late this evening, so I'll do a roll call. Councilwoman Bear. Councilwoman Conkis.
Here.
Councilman Saunders. Here. Mayor Johnson's here. Vice Mayor Malinowski.
Here.
Councilman Buckley. Here. Finance Manager Graham.
Here.
City Manager Baylor.
Here.
City Solicitor Redondo.
Here.
Chief of Police Smith. Here. All right, thank you. Open the floor for action upon minutes of the previous meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
All right, motion and a second to approve. Is there any questions from council?
I have one.
Yes.
I think I was here last month. I'm not good on the roll call.
So you're available, make sure that's correct. All right, any other questions, corrections, edits? All right, none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. The police report? Police report based on the statistics for February 2021. For February this year, we made 4 criminal arrests, which is up 1 from last year. Of the seriousness of the crimes, part 1 crimes, part 2 crimes, part 3 crimes, we had 2 part 1 crimes, 6 part 2 crimes, 2 lower level crimes, part 3 we had 15 of those. Based on last year, there were 4 part 1 crimes, 15 part 2 crimes, and only 4 part 3 crimes last year. Traffic arrests in February were 5 compared to 34 last year. Again, as I've been repeating earlier, we're all COVID related. Traffic warnings, only 2 this year compared to 15 last year. Crime prevention checks were 2 this year compared to 11 last year. Crime reports were 23 written this year and 23 written last year. Field service report, 35 this year compared to 60 last year. Total calls for service in February was 58 compared to 83 of 2020. When you look at year to date, we had 8 criminal arrests so far this year as opposed to 8 at this time last year. Part 1 crimes this year was 8. Last year, same thing was 8. Part 2 crimes this year, 36 compared to 106 last year. Part 3 crimes, 19 this year, which are lower level crimes compared to 12 of 2020. Year to date, so far this year, there were 6 traffic arrests compared to 49 last year. Traffic warnings 4 this year compared to 20 last year, year to date. Crime prevention checks 5 this year compared to 14 last year. Crime reports so far this year were 62 compared to 45 last year. Field service reports 67 this year compared to 114 last year. And so far, year to date, by the end of February, we're sitting at 129 total calls for service. This time last year, we were at 159 calls for service. Again, that's all based on February 2021 and so far year to date. Any questions on any of that?
I do have a question. Recently, the board was drafted, city solicitor.
John, I can't hear you.
Recently, a noise ordinance was drafted, and it was requested by the police department. Has the police department experienced noise, an increase in noise?
I can answer that. Since my time here, each summer, we get a lot of noise complaints from probably April, late April to beginning of October, mid-October. Most of it's in the residential community. We try to address it, but our ordinance is not sufficient enough to be able to address it appropriately.
Okay, did that come from the police department?
Came from me, yes.
Well, you're not the police department.
Well, it came from me
Okay.
as a carry-on from last year. Yes.
Okay. My second question would be.
And if you recall, sir, it's just a draft. It's not even.
I understood that the draft was something that would make me move out of Delaware.
Well, I'm sorry you feel that way, but it's just a draft.
Okay.
It's just a draft for your comments, so we can put together a nice product.
And look, having something, television set too loud for a hard hearing person, and the police having the ability to come in, confiscate that TV is not the good thing.
Councilman Buckner,
That
we
is
wouldn't
all
do that.
control.
We wouldn't do that.
Well, it's in the draft.
Okay.
Okay. So it should be.
And it's not that. If you recall, I sent you an email that the whole thing has been pulled.
I understand that.
Okay, but it's been pulled.
That was paid for by the city, right, to be written. And it was horrible. And
So
I know
noted. And I so noted.
thank you. I have another question. When somebody calls the police for a problem with Delaware City, are they to call 911? Okay, because I've been hearing some complaints saying they're taking 2-3 days to respond. I have a feeling they may be calling the city.
No, and so any emergency calls should go to 911. We make calls direct when we're there. In evenings, we're probably not in the office, we're on the road, we're not getting them. The Newcastle County non-emergency number, 573-2800, is your best bet for non-emergency calls. Obviously, anything life-threatening or serious,
call 911. Even if you're calling in barking dogs, that can always lead to something else. They won't take it as 911. 911 is your bottom line for everything. If you know something is not serious, the non-emergency number in Newcastle County is your best bet. And the reason that's the best bet is it goes there, it gets memorialized, and they can dispatch those. If you call the police station, and I'm just gonna throw a time out here, 10 o'clock at night, and we're out patrolling, there's no one in the office, we don't go back until midnight to check messages, I'm not gonna get that call. So calling the Newcastle County non-emergency number is absolutely your best bet for low level stuff.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your job.
Appreciate that.
Any other questions?
Yeah. We're gonna be starting, council members are gonna be starting on our budget here in a couple of months, working on it. And every grant that we can get is helpful, the budget then. Have you applied for any grants for, your department?
Yeah, we have numerous. Criminal Justice Council grant money is out there. We're doing an application for that. The Fund to Fight Violent Crimes grant, state aid and law enforcement.
Have you applied for it?
Yes,
Okay.
we have grant money, and the new grant year coming up, we will be applying for that again.
Have you been approved for any?
Yeah, every year we get approved for those grants.
Okay, all right, I just want to know for the budget. And how many applicants have we received, for, police officers?
We are in the process right now. We initially took 5 applicants, through the hiring process. We're in the process right now, written test. The next step is a oral board interview, which will be, candidates that made it past there, will go on to the oral board interviews.
Okay, now, are these the ones, you only have the ones for the police academy, right?
Yes.
No.
Certified, so the listing for certified officers, we always leave the application up on the website.
Yeah.
We will take those at any time of the year.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Hey, Steve, I just wanted a follow-up question. Do we still have a pool of part-time candidates as well, or are we just looking for the full-time?
Now, my last advertisement said, I'm looking for recruits, full-time and part-time. So what we do is we advertise for certified officers, full-time and part-time, throughout the state. I'll send it to the Delaware State database, and they send out all, certified police officers within the state to get that email. So, and it's on there full-time or part-time, you're looking for both. And that's the state out there continues.
All right, city manager report.
City manager report for March is as follows. Just an update on the mosquito control services for municipalities 2021. As I said last month, we anticipate the sprays to begin in May. We have asked for frequent sprays last week when the temperatures got warm. We did receive some complaints of mosquito bites, so that is on the forefront. Update on the Delmarva power reliability improvements. Delmarva is still planning on replacing some poles and transformers in the city at beginning May the 3rd. Those replacements may result in some power outages. Delmarva will notify the area residents of any anticipated power outage as a result of this improvement program. The gas line installation for Porcupine is still underway. From my understanding that is moving forward, and hopefully work will begin in the next month or so. Delaware City Community Center, as part of the capital review of the community center, an evaluation of the HVAC system was completed by Michael's Heating and Conditioning. They are HVAC company. The evaluation revealed that 2 units on the community center side of the building are 2002 units. Their age is starting to show. The collector boxes on both units are starting to rust out. A few of the condensers to the fan motors have already failed, and the life expectancy on most rooftop units is 15 years. Since we are going on 4 years past the life, we'll probably start to see more failures over there, and then, which is gonna result in the parts becoming obsolete for repair. Also, I have attached some photos at the end of my report to outline some of the things that was found during that review. Evaluation of our roof has revealed that the slings on the roof have aged to the point where they're breaking off, falling apart, and falling to the ground. This can present a safety issue. In addition, we have leaks throughout the building. I'm in the process of obtaining estimates for repair. We're also looking into establishing an entrance for the senior center on the southeast side of the building, closest to the rear parking lot and adjacent to the open field. Hopefully this will help our seniors to not have to walk through the building and put them closer to the senior center. This will will require installation of an ADA compliant ramp and improvements to the entranceway. We're getting estimates for that. Also wanted to provide you with an update on the library lease. Our attorney is currently in negotiation with Ted Rosenthal, the attorney for the library. Although it's my understanding that our attorney has requested more information and or follow-up with the library's attorney on less than 10 occasions since November, the library has yet to provide a kind of proposal. Instead, just this month, the library suggested a meeting with the attorney, the city manager, and the mayor. While we are not opposed to a meeting, we would like to go into any meeting with the knowledge of a starting point and position. They have not provided that information, therefore attorney specifically requested the library provide us with a counter proposal for our review prior to scheduling any meeting. We anticipate receipt of this counter proposal hopefully sometime this week. Delaware City Fence update, Lisa Lindsay of the refineries provided me with an email reflecting an update of the removal of the fence. That's attached to this report. Basically, she's indicated they have put that new fence out to bid and hope to be removing it sometime in the near future as the weather warms up, the ground loosens up, so they can put the new fence in. That is the city's manager's report.
All right, thank you. Hey, could you just give a quick update on the drainage meeting that we had about the pipes and the pump real quick? Remember putting the down at the park where they were talking about changing the fabricate.
The fabricate. So where we are now is that, as you are aware, we had the proposal from or the review from Duffield and Associates regarding what's going to be involved in hopefully removing that pump permanently. There was a lot involved in doing that. Some of the fabricates to the leads of the branch canal need to be replaced, which causes some of the flooding to Clinton Street. We are moving forward with that component. We are going to be requesting more money from our state legislators because the project is going to be well over what was allocated for this project.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the city manager?
Hey, on the library air conditioning unit, are we gonna get more quotes on this? Because that seems like a really high number.
Yes, we are. That was just a starting point from our HVAC company. We're going to have to at least get 2 more quotes.
Then,
Okay, that flanker gates, whatever you call them, for the drainage pipes, do we know what type we're getting?
Again, I think that he was going to come back next month with you because the questions that were generated as a result of the presentation, he wanted to go back and be able to answer and present it to you before we commit to the type of flat work.
I have one more question for you, Dave. Do we have any updates on the Little Branch Canal?
Updates regarding the ownership of it?
Yeah.
No. I think the Ford Corp has contacted me to initiate some conversations on that, but we have not set that up yet.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Quick question, on the library or the community center, it says there are 4 air conditioners.
4 systems up there, yes.
What's the age of the other 2?
They found them to be in pretty good shape. I can get you the age on them, but they addressed these two with immediate repairs.
All right, any other questions?
Do we have any updates on the solar farm field, and have we had any discussions with Tesla about part of this?
Yeah.
The solar field, we have reached out to the original consultant that the city retained when those fields were installed. We provided that person with our electric bills and all for his review because based on the conversation I had with him, he had some concern about what was coming back to the city. But where we are with that, I have to follow up with him.
And how about any talk of the chance of getting a charging station downtown for electric cars?
We can definitely look into that. That's one of the things that a lot of municipalities are starting to look into as electric cars start to become a reality. So yes, we can look into that.
Did you ever get any bids to make handicap accessibility for the NEVA?
Not yet. I was waiting till the summer or the spring, so.
The hotel tax, do we have a recording system in place for recording and collecting this tax?
I believe we do. Our finance manager did work on that, and I believe we do have that in place.
So I'll be able to get that. Okay. Public restrooms for the park for 2021. Have we talked to the board about moving up restrooms? If we are having a continuing problem, people here in the Wilson side of the
Okay, if you can do me a favor, and anytime you experience or witnessing that, report that immediately to the police department, non-emergency number 573-2800. We will try to address that. In terms of trying to work with the fort, it's been a challenge. I reached out to them on several occasions about even offering us to pay for cleaning of their bathrooms. I think what's going to ultimately result is us putting down porta potties there.
Well, I do have a porta potty in the back of my block, and it's actually used quite frequently by bikers and service centers. It also probably gets it out from friends, but it's not fair that we take over the whole city.
No, sir. And do you have any proposed location you'd like to see these porta potties?
Anywhere along the bike trail or anything, maybe on the back parking lot, that's in the corner, down here on Washington Street.
But not on the, how about adjacent to where the Ford is built?
Yeah, we had it before.
Okay, all right. I just want to be sure I'm accommodating your needs.
Okay, good one. We're down in public.
Public needs, I'm sorry.
The sidewalks around the community center are in really bad need of repair. Do we have any kind of plans?
We're doing as you can see, we're trying to do a comprehensive review of the whole building. We're not getting any assistance from, the funding is difficult. I'll be very honest with you. And what to prioritize, finding out the slates are falling from the roof. The last thing I need is for that to fall onto a child or a senior. So it's on the list. I'm not sure when I can get to that, but it's definitely on the list.
Another thing for that.
Okay.
The 7th Street basketball court, in 7th Street Park.
Yes, sir.
The chain link fence there is all torn up and brick. I'm concerned that one kid playing that, we're careful something is right.
Okay, sir.
So I definitely think that's a safety hazard.
Yes, sir.
Town hall. And getting into town hall now, you have 2 sets of locked doors to get in. You have to buzz to get in. And a lot of times our seniors and people are in the outside elements in the cold weather. When they come in the first set of doors, the employees have to let them in. Then there's another set of doors that are locked. Why do we have to keep the first set of doors locked? Why can't we unlock those doors?
Well,
There is a last position.
they are. And as you know, we are trying our hardest with a very small staff. I'm trying to limit the exposure of our staff to the COVID, vaccinations so we all can get them. Once we receive our COVID vaccinations, we'll open that outer door, but right now, if I lose anybody on my staff, or if anybody in the staff gets it, and we all get it, then town hall shuts down. So we're trying to just facilitate anybody's request. We will come to the door, we'll try to we put in an mail slot, and if anyone makes an appointment, we take those precautions, let them in, but,
Well, we got them in, though. Aren't they in front of the glass window?
and some come through. We let some in depending on the level of service that we need to provide.
Okay. And that, I guess my thought is, we're putting the employees more at risk. I don't want to have an income and I don't want to be doing it. We got your staff up and
Well, it's on a limited basis, but, like I said, I mean, the COVID has changed things for everyone, and, we're still providing our service, and we will continue to provide the service as best we can. These are just mechanisms in place to just keep our people safe. And like I said, I am anticipating, that sometime after 1C, which I hope is in May, that we can open up that front door so that we can come in and provide that service, customer service.
And last, two other things. During this recent, nice spell of weather, I actually walked our town waterfront, and I noticed along Canal Street, there's signs up that saying that you're going to be towed if you park on a certain side of Canal Street. And the marina has signs up. Does the marina have right to tow cars on Canal Street?
Anyone in town can have vehicles towed from private property. Any public street will be addressed by the police department.
Is Canal Street public property?
Well, that's really kind of right now a dispute, because with the whole issue with the Army Corps of Engineer, I'm still trying to figure out who owns that, or who has the rights to that property. It's very ambiguous right now as to what right the city has to that street and what it doesn't. It's not clear to me. So we are in contact with the Army Corps of Engineer, because there was an agreement put in place with the city that allowed usership, but not being able to use it and access it, and being able to do enforcement in two totally different things. So I gotta find out who actually has that right to tow any vehicles from that street.
Okay. And last but not least, the Harriet Tubman Trail sign. Where and what are we looking for?
I didn't put up the signs, I don't know, but I can check.
Okay, I do get a lot of visitors asking me, where's the trailhead, where's the, information about it, and I know nothing.
I don't either, but I will look into that for you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, any other questions for the city manager? All right, we'll move on to the finance manager. I'm sorry, city solicitor's report.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, in the last month, a number of items that we've been working on. First would be the two ordinances that are on new business tonight. One is regarding HPR permitted uses, and the other regarding buffer street and council authority issues. I will review those two ordinances when we get to new business. Some other matters in the last month. One is reported at the last meeting that someone had filed 2 complaints with the Department of Justice regarding FOIA violations. We did receive the responses from the Department of Justice, and the Department of Justice concluded there were no FOIA violations. So essentially, there was no issue there. I did review the water agreement that people used to sign with the city providing water, because issues came up about some deposits that were still on hand, and the agreements themselves permit any of those deposits to be used to pay back taxes, which apparently is an issue, and that money can't be used for that purpose, and specifically in the water agreement. We've reviewed some new towing contracts that were supplied, just to make sure they're consistent with towing contracts for other jurisdictions. We did prepare a noise ordinance for council's review that was tabled. Just a little background on noise ordinances. Noise ordinances are very, very hard to enforce. So they're generally written very broadly, but if you took a look at the ordinance for a first offense, there was a warning. Was a penalty for a first offense. But they are written very broadly to try and cover as many circumstances as possible, because when people try to enforce them, there's always an explanation. Certainly there's discretion on behalf of the code officer, police officers involved at the scene, and certainly through proper training, they'll not expect to see the worst case scenario arise, but it is important that you're written broadly to cover the different scenarios that are out there and provide a warning to people if there is a noise violation. Lastly, there was additional work on the comp plan. We've had discussions with the state planning office regarding the status of our comp plan in their eyes, and we're waiting for some feedback from the state planner regarding what's expected of us before we resubmit responses to the state planning office letter that was received a year or so ago, because so much time has passed. They've asked for an opportunity to update us with what they expect us to see from us. And that covers the matters from the past month. Thank you.
Any questions for the city solicitor?
I do. First of all, I'd like to congratulate you on your appointment as city solicitor. Second of all, what is your hourly rate for the city?
You know, I think it's probably $300 an hour, but I've been routinely writing off 20 to 25% a month as a credit for a government agency. But I have to look specifically to see what that is. And I also note for the record that we don't even bill for our hour. We work on city matters, recognizing this is a small government. And I'm happy to provide that benefit to the city, as long as I feel like I'm reciprocating. There's no requirement that I take 20% off my bill, but I can change that and not do that. So I do expect respectful conversations with members of council. And as long as I have respectful conversations with members of council and the city, I will continue to give those reductions, but in no way am I required to. It's not part of my contract.
Do you have a contract with the city?
We have an agreement. We have an agreement for the rate, but I'll be happy to provide that to you, certainly.
Yeah, I'm just inquiring because I asked that prior to your appointment. I was totally really sure. And of course, I think I already voiced how I feel about the noise ordinance. I definitely feel that we don't have an issue. We haven't had issues reported to council from the police department. And to me, that ordinance was not enough control. I did not like the verbiage in it at all.
I understand that. I think part of the process here, as long as I'm involved with writing ordinances, is we're looking for constructive feedback. So certainly noise is an issue. A lot of citizens have issues with noise. And so what we try to do with that ordinance is write something very broad to catch all the potential issues that are out there. But the first offense penalty is a warning. So there's no real teeth in the ordinance, but at least allows for an investigation and allows for that to be addressed before it becomes a bigger issue. So certainly something the council does not need to act on, but we want to provide an opportunity for that to be reviewed and for allow for constructive communication on that. And if nothing passes, that's fine. I think the issues have been in the summertime, and we might be here in July when people are raising issues about noise and saying, why didn't we do anything? So that's on the table, and it's certainly not need to be passed. But the idea, I think, with these ordinances is to get them in front of council for review prior to the first reading, for review and comments.
Thank you.
Right. Any other questions for the city solicitor?
If I can just note though, that's probably not accurate, that we have not had any noise issues we have. we do get calls from the people that live particularly on Washington Street, on Clinton Street, about loud noise coming from vehicles, loud noise coming from motorcycles, loud motorcycles, especially when they're trying to get, either trying to sleep, trying to get the kids to sleep. So we do get those occasionally, and we have some repeat offenders that do that. We do get loud noise complaints from the mobile home park. We do get disorderly premise complaints from, particularly from the mobile home park, although I'm not picking on it. It's just that the frequencies of the calls seem to come from there more often. And it frustrates some of the residents that live next door when we can't do anything about it. So that's, to put it in perspective, there is an issue at times, and we're not the only municipality that deals with it. We're just trying to find a way to be able to provide citizens and residents the quality of life that they are entitled to as they live in town. That's all.
All right, thank you. Finance manager report.
All right, she needs the, that's just, she needs the, I guess, that's not the way, that's just the school.
Good evening. I'll be presenting the internal unaudited income and expense statement and treasurer's report for the 8 months ending February 28, 2021. Currently, the general fund has an operating surplus of $1,900,396.99. Our general fund revenues are trending at 158% of the budget. Let's see. The revenue amount is $3,143,596. Currently, expenditures are trending at 62% of the budget at $1,232,199.33. For non-departmental revenues, currently all revenue lines have a positive variance except cable franchise tax. We're still expecting one additional cable franchise fee payment in the month of May. General administration revenues at this time are at 110% of the budget. All the revenue lines are trending either ahead or within expectations at this period of the fiscal year, except for sales. Sales are trending below the budget due to the town hall building closure due to safety. So we're not taking as many requests for faxes and notary, etc. They are by appointment only. Currently, general administration expenditures are trending at 50% of the budget. As you can see from the expense lines, all the CARES Act expenses have been put into their own budget lines and removed from the other budget expenses. For code enforcement, revenues are currently at 161% of the budget, and expenditures are at 42% of the budget. For public safety, revenues are currently at $71,612, whereas expenditures are at $315,535. Nothing out of the ordinary in regards to expenses, and as you can see, the CARES Act expenses related to public safety have also been given their own expenditure line. The community center. Our community center revenue is currently trending at 70% of the adopted budget. That's mainly attributed to the granted aid revenue as well as CARES Act grant revenue. As you can see, we have already recognized all of the granted aid funds that we received for fiscal year 21 at the $35,000 range. Community center expenditures, as you can see, they continue to trend over the fiscal year budget as they will throughout the rest of the fiscal year. In addition, CARES Act expenditures have also been separated from budgeted expenditures and given their own budget line. Public works expenditures are currently at 94% of the budget, with still 4 months to go in the fiscal year. I'm currently still working with FEMA for the Hurricane Isaias expenditures, having bi-weekly meetings with them to possibly get to the point where we are reimbursed for some of those expenses. Nothing out of the ordinary for sanitation, yard waste, or stormwater for this period in the fiscal year. For the streets, as you see, our municipal street aid increased substantially from last month's report. That's due to snow and ice control expenses for the multiple snow days that we had in February. Drainage and park, both nothing out of the ordinary from the other reports. Trees and recycling are also currently still on track within the budget, nothing out of the ordinary since last month's report, as well as debt service expenditures. For the water fund, we currently have a net income of $284,982. You'll see that the water utility fees decreased from last month's report. That's due to after their fiscal year audit, July's billing is recognized in the previous fiscal year, so therefore it's been adjusted from the fiscal year 21 financials. Also, as I noted last month, I've been doing some reconciliation with Artesian on our accounts receivable files. I had received payment for them. Had made payment to them as a result of the reconciliation, and as that will be reflected, as you'll see in the contractual services expenses, as well as we also did payment to PSC for work done to the electric service and cutting edge. I attributed that to the water because that expense was a result of the sale of the water. We needed to have a new electric box put in at the cutting edge site to differentiate the electric from the water tower and the electric from that exact site. The other revenue lines are just special revenue funds. I will point out that real estate transfer tax, we're currently at $140,526.72 at this point. And the other thing and everything else is basically special revenue funds, and that concludes the finance report.
All right, thank you. Any questions for this finance manager?
On our legal budget, we're approximately $15,000 over budget. Is it because we're not budgeting enough, or is it because we're making too many orders?
I can answer that. I think some of that, or a lot of that would be attributed to what we've dealt with the Blue Water project, and then having to find a new solicitor because of the issues related to the previous solicitor. Am I correct, Michelle?
Quick question for you, Michelle. Are there any revenue that we have this year or grant type revenues that expire, that if they're not spent for some reason, if they're allocated to some, specific category and they're not spent, do we lose them? Or are those carried over? How does that work?
Well, right now, the only operating grants that I have open are the Park Street grant and the surface water grant, which we're probably at completion of KCI billing, and I'll be within probably the next month applying for those funds. But outside of police grants, those are like only two. And as well as, we'll be getting new CARES Act money, with the new bill that was passed, so. But I have no other grant money that is open that I am aware of.
The police grants that we talked about earlier, If they're not used for some reason, our police department is down because we've lost officers and things, does that money get rolled over, or how does that work?
I don't handle those grants, so I can't answer that.
Well, on those grants, they give you a contract time for the grant, usually a year. And to apply for the next cycle of those grants, you have to use up 50% of it. So we have a couple that we haven't used 50% of. We will eventually. The other ones can be used for equipment and different things like that. And if you miss the grant contract, the initial one, and a lot of agencies do, especially the small ones, then it goes into a pool, you start pulling from that pool. So whereas we may have put in for, and I'm just throwing a number out there, $10,000 from one grant, you miss the contract pool, that goes into a general fund, you can start pulling out there for different needs as you apply for, and it's all online based contract. But to answer your initial question, if you don't use a certain amount of it in a given time, then you can't apply for the next cycle.
To add on that, you do lose it. Because you do lose it at a certain point. You can ask for an extension, but you will lose it. We've had to, in the past, return funds.
Are we in a mode where we might have to return some this year because of just the dynamics of what's going on?
I think it's too early to tell right now. I think we'll probably be better to answer that question around July.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, any other questions? All right, now I'll entertain a motion to approve subject to audit.
I make a motion.
All right, motion second, any other questions? Not all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Appointments, announcements, communication, not on the agenda this evening. We do have, an appointment next month. Barry Nixon from, user on the Little League has agreed to serve on the planning commission. I sent his resume in, didn't have enough time to get it on the agenda for this evening, but it'll be on for next month. We're also looking to fill some other vacancies that we have on the board of adjustment. So if anybody knows anybody who's willing to serve or wants to participate, contact myself, town hall, or anybody on council. All right, reports of commissions, committees, organizations. Any committee, commission, organization want to give a report? HDC, planning, Tim.
Planning, we actually had a meeting this month, the first time in several months. I'm very pleased that we're going to get another member. We've been running short. People quitting for COVID. People quitting for COVID. And people not being here. So I'm glad you get another body. I'd like to see one more. Get it. That's about it. I have some questions on what's been proposed here, but I'll wait on that to the comment portion.
Any other committees, commissions, organizations? Lisa?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Lisa Lindsay from the Delaware City Refining Company, and I just wanted to briefly inform the council and the city some proposals of land development that PBF Energy is exploring. As you know, with the recent demand destruction of transportation fuels related to the COVID-19 pandemic, it has had a huge impact on the refining industry as well as other businesses throughout the world. So PBF has engaged in various initiatives across the company to raise funds to keep us whole. And one of those initiatives was they laid off some folks, unfortunately, at our Paulsboro refinery. We sold several hydrogen plants. And one of our new initiatives is the potential to sell some parcels of land that the refinery owns. We have enlisted a company called Addison Young that will be working to identify qualified developers around the country who may be interested in developing some of the lands nearby. The PBS goal is to seek developers who can turn the land into beneficial opportunities for the area and create sustainable employment for Delawareans. We are extremely excited about the opportunity that it may create for the community, and we believe this is an opportunity to leverage an asset with the win-win benefits. The PBF and DCR leadership has spoken to the governor's office, state elected officials, the Delaware City Mayor, Newcastle County Executive, local municipalities, and several state and county agencies to make them aware of our intent for the proposed land development. So if you hear rumors that the refinery is for sale, it is not. It's just several pieces of parcels of land that we feel that we could benefit by selling.
May I ask Lindsay a question for the comprehensive plan?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yes.
The land you're talking about, is there any land right around the city, such as the soccer field and the other farm fields that are used by farmers?
Well, the field, there is a piece of land on Hamburg Road that is a part of a farmland. And the other piece of property that we are looking at is actually right off of Cox Necks Road, not right off of it, but behind the development of Cox Necks Road. There's a section of conservation easement, that Dragon Run, that'll never be developed. But on the other side of that conservation easement of Dragon Run, it's already zoned heavy industrial. So therefore, I mean, that's actually, the development in front of it is actually where Senator Ford lives. We had already spoken to her, but they were already aware of what that land was zoned. So they anticipated development on it at some point in time.
They appreciate the answer. Those areas.
Land of interest removal. What did you say? You said land of interest. Oh. Well, we have Addison Young. We've also been working with the Delaware Prosperity Partnership. So if there's some interest in purchasing land, yeah, they can do it.
Lisa, any interest in selling Baby Beach?
You know, that did come up, that discussion did come up. But the city has, you know, that would have to be a discussion between our lawyer, company, and, you know.
The city's not interested, I'll have.
Oh, okay. And introduce you to our, Mark Chapman as our lawyer.
Love to meet you. Thank you. Thank you.
Any
Any
other?
other?
I have to take over maintenance for that pump, right?
We can handle that.
Any other committees, commissions, or organizations? All right, if none, I will move on to, there's no old business this evening, move on to new business. Item number 1 is an introduction, first reading of ordinance 21-0315-01 to amend chapter 46 of the Delaware City Code by amending the HPR district uses under sections 46-28A 20, 46-28A 21, 46-28A 26, and adding sections 46-28A 42, 46-28A 43, and adding a special use permit for certain uses and associated fees. I know that was a mouthful, so I will turn it over to, you want to tee that up, Phil? Yes. All right, turn it over to the city solicitor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first ordinance tonight that's on for first reading does relate to the HPR zoning district. If you're not familiar with the HPR zoning district, it's a zoning district that includes many uses, a broad range of uses from all types of residential uses, commercial, office, mixed uses, and even some industrial, I believe, light industrial type uses. So there's a lot of uses in there. This ordinance is related to the permitted residential uses. Under the existing code, there's a broad variety of residential uses that would be permitted. And further, under the Delaware code, those residential uses would be largely as a matter of right. So essentially, as a matter of right, it means that city council will not have any discretion to reject the plan. There were some concerns about some density over in the HBR zoning district. So this ordinance was designed to address that concern. This ordinance does affect Fort DuPont. Fort DuPont was involved with the creation of this ordinance. And so if I can, I'll just go through this ordinance, provide a summary for you as to what this ordinance would permit from a residential perspective in the HBR zoning district. Going forward, as a matter of right, single-family homes, semi-detached homes, which are duplexes or townhouses in groups of 3 or 4, they would be permitted under the code. Other uses, which would be the multifamily type uses, would be permitted, but a special use permit would be required for those types of uses to go forward. And that basically what this permits is for city council to have an opportunity to take a look and review and approve plans that they have an opportunity to evaluate. Under the current code, any projects that are projected for or proposed for the HBR zoning district, if they brought them forward, for the most part, city council would have to approve them if they met the requirements. An example of that is the RV park. City council had no option but to vote yes to the RV park when it came up for a final vote because it met the zoning requirements. So under this ordinance, section 1 states the permitted uses by right in the HBR zoning district. Section 2 talks about multifamily uses, which would be permitted, and that would be any type of use that's not in the designated permitted by right category. So that would be some things that we've heard from the board that they may want to do in the HBR district, which would be perhaps stacked townhouses, residential over commercial or office, and potentially the development of existing buildings. So what this ordinance does is say, yes, you can bring those plans forward, but we, as city council, have an opportunity to review those by way of a special use permit. The concept of a special use permit was presented to us by Fort DuPont. So Fort DuPont met with us. They said, why don't you have a special use permit requirement for consideration? And so we're essentially adopting what they thought was reasonable. Now, when the board presented to us their ordinance, that's how the draft started. It did say that up to 10 units would be permitted by right. And you put in a special use permit for a multi-family unit for less than 10 units. So we did dial that back to 0 because there are ways to essentially come up with multi-family units of 10 or less, and then this ordinance would have no value whatsoever. So essentially, we did adopt the concept presented by Fort DuPont, but we stated that that's from the get-go. If you want to do something other than the permitted uses, bring a plan into the city and let the city review it. We do have a little bit of a complicated situation here because Fort DuPont, that's where the HBR zoning district is, there is a lot of flexibility within the code for them to do a lot of things and present a lot of projects. But I think the problem that has developed here is that developers go to Fort DuPont. Fort DuPont is thinking that it has total control essentially over what we go in Fort DuPont. And then Delaware City isn't given an opportunity early enough in the process to comment on projects. I happen to do a lot of development work. A large part of my practice is development work. And anytime I represent a client, I go to the owner or in this case, Fortune Pond is the owner or the control of the property, certainly you have to deal with that person. But I also go to the jurisdiction that's gonna actually approve the plan. And there's currently a project at Fortune Pond that's not what happened. It seemed that everything was going to Fortune Pond for, its approval, and then that was it. It was, if the board said yes, then it was assumed that the city would say yes. And, the idea of this process, which the board did propose, is that let's have a special use permit so that the developer would come to the city when they go to the board, so the city could have a crack at this early in the process. And not just with the idea of what's in the Saatchi plan for Fort Dupont, because that's a very general plan. It's only fair that the city see projects early on, and not just a general concept of we want to see, just a general concept of we want to have, for instance, some sort of housing type. What's fair is that the Delaware City actually see a more concrete set of plans and renderings earlier in the process. And I think in meeting with Fort Dupont on this, there was an agreement that that process was appropriate. And we may disagree as to what would be permitted as a matter of right, where the board had proposed anything greater than 10 units, where the city said, no, we like to see anything that requires a special use permit, which is not unreasonable. So section 2 goes through the fact that anything other than the permitted use can be brought forward to Delaware City. And that will be evaluated by way of a special use permit and by the standards set forth in section 2. In section 3, we talk about, there was questions about condominiums. There's condominium state law in Delaware. Condominium law basically says any permitted use can be in a condominium form of ownership. So we're just clarifying that that's the case in section 3. But that's state law. State law says if it's a permitted use, you have to permit a condominium form of ownership. Section 4 talks about some specific situations that Fort Dupont was concerned about. They were concerned about the redevelopment of existing properties, which is certainly something that Delaware City wants to see happen. And if the fort would like to use existing buildings for something other than the permitted uses, they come forward with a special use permit and explain that to city council, so city council can have an eye on projects earlier on. Section 4 also talked about the, as I mentioned earlier, residential over commercial or office uses. And again, specifically it was put in here that in the HDR district, a request can be made via a special use permit to do that type of development. So at the end of the day, I don't see a huge difference here between what Fort Dupont proposed and what's in this ordinance, because the only difference, in my opinion, is that Fort Dupont wanted to have some latitude regarding up to 10 units would be by right, where Delaware City said, no, if you're going to do anything that's not permitted by right, you need to get a special use permit. This ordinance has gone through many forms over the last couple of weeks based on phone conversations, meetings, and observation of the DuPont board meeting the other day. And I think what this is boiled down to is probably fairly close to what was discussed between the parties. So for now, this is a first reading. I spoke with the forest attorney today, and they're not particularly pleased with this, but I was only able to get this draft out today because there's been changes throughout the course of the weekend. But this matter will go to the planning commission. I would expect to go to the planning commission possibly in April or May, which would be April 12th or May 3rd meeting. And then it would come back to city council possibly at the May 17th meeting or the June 21st meeting. So I would expect over this time, we'll certainly take any comments from council members or other interested parties. There'll be a public planning commission meeting where anyone who feels that this needs to be modified can present their case to the planning commission. And then there will be another public meeting before city council at one of those later dates where, further discussions can be had on this ordinance.
All right, thank you. Any questions for council?
You also read this one.
Well, actually, the initial draft of this came from Fortune Fund. And then I amended it to reflect concerns that I heard from, I'm sorry,
Am I hearing you right?
could you speak to my computer?
Ask for this one?
Oh, they didn't ask for it, but they provided a draft after we had a meeting to discuss the concern.
But what council person submitted for this ordinance to happen?
Well, I think all council, or most of council, had questions after the RV park was approved as to, what sort of authority do we have? And it may not have been you, but there were multiple members of council
No.
that were concerned about what happened there. I mean, I do development work all the time. If it's by right, then developers think, easy, I meet the code, but often there are situations where there should be some flexibility for approval. And the thing is, when you actually have a little bit of flexibility, you often end up with a better product because the developer is more likely to will compromise on some issues and make for a better product. So code level is a basic level. Yeah.
So to try to answer your question, the origin of this, the genesis of this probably was derived mostly from me through input from various council members who were not happy with the way the whole Blue Water situation unfolded and their feeling of a lack of accountability to the people that they represent by not having any choice in the ultimate decision on what happened with Blue Water. That being said, they were concerned about future development over there and not having any say. So with that feedback, I asked that something be put together, and it was put together. And then there was a meeting with myself, Vice Mayor Malinowski, Councilwoman Coggis, Mayor Johnson, Mr. Jeff Randall, and Max Walton, regarding that initial document, that initial draft. The input was provided from Max to our solicitor, and through some iterations, of which was shared with everyone on council. The product that we have here tonight was a compilation of all that collaboration. Is that the best way to describe it?
Yes.
Any other questions? All right, is there a motion by council? A motion to approve the first reading by Councilwoman Bear, is there a second?
Second.
All right, there's a second. Going to roll call, please.
We have discussion.
Oh, yeah, discussion, go ahead.
We had a master plan that was written. We had a lot of public inputs in it about Fort Pine. We had professional people come in that have paid planners that developed these plans for Fort Pine. I'd like to know who on council has expertise in planning. I certainly don't. I think that this ordinance is just going to create more red tape, and Delaware City, I've always liked it because it's been very business friendly. This ordinance is not going to be business friendly. It prohibits a lot, and it gives council a lot of discretionary things that may not bring the creative merchants that have came to Delaware City in the past. Delaware City was founded as a working seaport town, and that's what attracted me here because of our diversity. I'm just sad that we have to do this. I think we're wasting money. I think we're creating ordinances. That's why we're running our legal budget out of crazy. And but I believe when you have a plan, you stick with the plan. It was approved by the city. It was approved by the residents. There was a lot of input. This has had no input by residents. And I just think it's a sad day for Delaware City.
And over and over that our country was founded by the people for the people. And the people spoke loud and clear through the last process that they felt that the representatives that they elect did not have any say in the process. So for good government, and it's not going to always please everybody, but if people elect people to represent them in their interests, then the people that are sitting at the table, and I have no seat at the table other than I will do what I'm told when I'm told. But after hearing a lot of banks from people, I think it was loud and clear that they felt that the representatives here should have some input as to their sitting. And if I'm wrong, I'll be the first one to fall on the sword and say I'm wrong. But in this instance, I don't think I'm wrong. I think it was loud and clear how some people felt, not everybody, but some people. So when we discuss or debate this, no, none of us up here are planners. None of the council people in the city of Wilmington are planners. None of the council people in the city of Newark are planners. But they are people that represent people. And at the end of the day, they should have a say in what comes in this town and what doesn't come in this town.
All right, any other questions, comments, discussion? All right, we'll go to roll call, please.
Councilmember Crockett? Councilmember Buckheit?
Nay.
Councilmember Barrett? Aye. Councilmember Saunders?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Malinowski?
Aye. All right, ordinance is approved. I vote 4-1. Go on to first reading. I'm sorry, first reading was approved. Vote 4-1. Go on to item number 2, which is introduction, first reading of ordinance 21-0315-02 to amend chapter 46 and 54 of the city code and add requirements to riparian buffer within the HBR district, streets and major subdivisions, and site plan approvals. You want to tee this one up too, Bill?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The second ordinance was meant to address a few issues. I'd like to just go through them, each section, to give you an overall view of this. This ordinance will also go to the Planning Commission on either April 12th or May 3rd. And certainly we'll take any input on this in the meantime. But section 1 is just correcting a section of the code with the wrong letters. The Delaware City Code is really difficult to read and understand because of the way the numbering and lettering is done. I believe that council is going to be looking at ways to perhaps make a searchable code because the way it's set up right now is very difficult. So this ordinance goes and touches on a variety of areas within the code. And I need to explain it because they fit into different sections. When you're writing legislation, you have to do it pursuant to the charter, and these are sort of the small sections out of a much larger code. So the first section is just correcting lettering. The second section, section 2, is regarding providing a riparian buffer. There is no riparian buffer in the Delaware Code right now, Delaware City Code. And with the RV park, we found that the development had no requirement for riparian buffer. And there are certain areas that many people thought could have been better protected. This actually comes from Newcastle County Code. So we're just basically bringing consistent with the county code, but taking out one major section because the Newcastle County couldn't build the floodplain under the riparian buffer ordinance, which would have completely wiped out the RV park, if that was part of the Delaware City Code. So we did take that out because we do know that there are certain lands that could be developed that may be in the floodplain, so that was removed from this ordinance. But what this actually requires is for an engineer to review the protected resources around water sources and determine the extent of riparian buffer. But it's the way Newcastle County does it after a very thorough review of passing their code. And I think it'd be appropriate to simply apply what Newcastle County applies, but the exception regarding the building in a floodplain. Section 3 is about tabling matters. Essentially, right now, the code isn't entirely clear about city council or planning commission tabling matters. What we have in here is that the city council and planning commission can table matters one time. And I do think that's important because either the planning commission or city council should be able to table plans indefinitely. That would not be a fair process. Essentially, if we table one time, if somehow the applicant is not ready after it comes back the second time, then the applicant can decide if they want to withdraw the plan and reapply, or perhaps they've done the code and a vote can be taken. Again, it's pretty consistent with the Newcastle County Code, actually with the county code states. Section 4 and the rest of these sections change the review process by both the planning commission and city council when it comes to approving plans and rezonings. Currently, the city code, these items are for the most part by right, which means as long as a developer is able to meet the city code, which by the way is a fraction of the size of the county code. The county code is much more depth and has much more regulation than the city code. It's just the nature of the beast. You have a small jurisdiction. When I was working for Newcastle County, they redid the land use code. We spent 9 months and probably spent $1 million on consultants to bring them in to develop a code that is a massive code. Well, Delaware City's code is a fraction of that size. But nevertheless, if a developer could come into Delaware City and meet those bare minimum requirements, when the plan came to City Council had to vote yes. And we saw that example with the RV park. Now, what we're trying to do in this ordinance is section 4 specifically is about rezonings. And that just sets forth the criteria for the planning commission and city council to consider when they're reviewing a rezoning. And these criteria that you see in here are the criteria of Newcastle County. So Newcastle County uses the process that we have set forth in here. So Delaware City council members and asking us to prepare this documentation is not seeking to do something uncommon or unfamiliar to developers who work in this area. So section 4 relates to rezonings and the standard to be reviewed in considering a rezoning. And then because of the way the code is set up, section 5 is different than that. I want to touch on section 5 because it's not about the authority or review of planning commission or city council. Section 5 is regarding DelDOT standards. The idea with this section is to simply require that within Delaware City, any plans meet DelDOT requirements. DelDOT has a lot of different requirements, and there are always waivers and there are exceptions to the rule. This particular section had an exception to the HPR district, stating it did not need to satisfy Delaware Department of Transportation standards. And this amendment is simply done to reflect the fact that if the Delaware State Department of Transportation will approve the roads being proposed in HPR, then that will be satisfactory. But it should not have an exception from the Delaware Department of Transportation standards. And I'm not even sure that the Delaware Department of Transportation would allow us, a subsidiary government, to avoid state law. So that really should not be an issue for the HPR, presuming that they can gain the approval of the Delaware Department of Transportation, the state agency. So section 6 relates to major development plans. Section 6 and 7 talk about the planning commission and then city council. What is the standard of review for a major plan? And what this essentially does is sets forth a review process for city council. And section 6 and 7 relate to major plans. In terms of what is a major plan in Delaware City, a major plan is defined as a lot, parcel, or piece of land to be divided as provided for in the subdivision regulation that disturbs land greater than 10,000 square feet or creates more than 3 total lots. So if a developer wants to disturb more than 10,000 square feet or create more than 3 lots, that's a major subdivision plan. Minor plans do not have to go through this process. So a small project, 2-lot project does not need to go through this process. But if it's a major plan as defined by the code, the planning commission and city council have the right to review it under the standards set forth in these sections and vote yes or no. If you look at the section that's crossed out before this said by right to amend the code, but that by right has been removed to give city council the ability to review major plans. And that actually also goes into section 8. Section 9 and 10 relate to major site plans. So in this Delaware City, you have subdivision plans, major, minor, you have site plans, major, minor. A major site plan is under the code. A major site plan is defined as any new development or construction consisting of 4 or more dwelling units when a subdivision is not required, or contemplate a building of greater than 15,000 square feet when a subdivision is not required. So essentially, section 9 and 10 relate to major site plans. And when they go to the planning commission, when they go to city council, the procedures set forth in here will have to be followed. And then at the end, section 12 talks about tabling matters, because this is another section as well, where the city council and planning commission can only table one time. So essentially, what this ordinance is designed to do is give the elected officials an opportunity to review, based on these criteria, the appropriateness of proposed development for major subdivision plans and major site plans. And that's a summary of what this ordinance is proposed to do.
All right, thank you. Any questions from council?
Yes, what impact will this, plan have on the future development of that array?
John, I can't hear you.
What would be the impact that this, ordinance would have on the future development of the array?
Well, I don't know. I would think that it could have some impact if someone did not want to come to Delaware City and explain the plan. All this does, in essence, is have people come into Delaware City early in the process to come to council and explain, here's what we're doing. I would expect that council would be fair in reviewing plans and provide early information as to what would be approvable or not. The developers do love a by right process where they can just come in at the minimum level, which is basically the code. They would like that. But I don't think it's unfair for council to have their say and provide a little bit of latitude in negotiating with developers. This happens regularly in projects that I'm involved with by right plans or rezonings. And rezoning does require more community involvement. What this ordinance does is it takes major site plans, major subdivision plans, and requires, essentially, if you want to get a plan approved, you shouldn't just go to Fort DuPont and have them bless a plan and expect city council to approve it. This ordinance would, I would think, would cause a developer to come to the city and say, what do you think? And I think a collaboration between Fort DuPont and Delaware City, it may have no impact on this, but I do think that there's got to be more collaboration between Fort DuPont and Delaware City to ensure that everyone's on board with the project. And unfortunately, the by right process doesn't lend to that.
Right. Any other questions?
First is the planning commission. I want to ask a question on behalf of the planning commission. There. There. You okay with that?
Oh, no.
Okay. In the past, you see, as co-chair or chair of the planning commission, I probably tabled things twice. In both cases, it was because of lack of information for the time. Now, if I have a situation where the person is not able to provide all that information, and I table, and then the next time rolls around and that occurs again for my options.
For your options is to make a negative recommendation, because the planning commission's goal on this is to make a recommendation. And I would think that if you were asked for information, there's a first meeting and you ask for information, and they come back to a second meeting, and they still haven't provided the information. I think at that point, there's two options. One is, and I see this all the time in other jurisdictions, and a smart attorney representing them will either have given the information, or perhaps you withdraw that if you don't want to get a negative recommendation. But if a developer comes to you and is not prepared, and you've asked for information, they come back to the second meeting, you simply, I think our options are, well, we can make a recommendation based on what you've given us, and you didn't give us everything. So we're gonna recommend no. Or they should withdraw their application and do it right the next time. I mean, I work for government reviewing plans for years, and I represent developers getting plans. So I've been through all these scenarios, and the developers know what they need to do to get things approved. And I mean, it's sort of the nature of the beast that, even some of our clients, they want to do the minimum to get it through. And we want to raise the level of the playing field here. I think that's one of the goals.
Yes, sir. Any other questions? Council? Is there a motion to approve the first reading?
Motion.
Right, motion by Councilman Barrett to introduce the first reading. Is there a second? Second. All right, second. Councilman Saunders, is there any other discussion or questions? All right, if not, we'll go to roll call.
Councilmember Plunkett. Councilmember Buckhead.
Yeah.
Councilmember Barrett. Councilmember Saunders.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Malinowski.
Aye. All right, thank you. That first reading is also approved by a vote of 4-1. That is all the items under new business this evening. We're going to members of council comments. Start with Councilwoman Barrett. Councilwoman Plunkett. Councilman Saunders.
No.
Councilman Buckley.
I'm gonna be late.
Give them the microphone, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, friends, and neighbors of Delaware City. Tonight's going to be my final meeting as an elected official for Delaware City. The last 2 years has been challenging and disappointing in most cases. But I'd like to talk about some of my achievements that I made on council and some of the flaws I've had on council. First, I thoroughly support the redevelopment before the time. I was all behind it. I love what they're doing over there. Even if some things may not be to my liking, it's still thought of and planned out by before the time. I did oppose the height regulations of the property and had to change from 8 stories to 5 stories without any major change in the master plan that was voted on by the public and previous councils. I made the acting city manager 2 years ago aware of the penalty funds that the city was entitled to through the refinery, and penalty funds was eventually awarded to the city. I've requested the mayor and council to develop a master plan for Washington Street and Battery Park. After a recent visitation of Washington Street, I'm really sad to see our waterfront the condition it is in. We're all worried about 4th of July and right in our own backyard. It looks pretty ugly in Washington Street. Veterans Points became a public urination thing. With a master plan, we could put up a courtyard and make works in honor of our fallen soldiers and people that served, our local heroes in Delaware City. We could take the park benches, make them all uniform instead of having a mismatch of park benches that look like they came from our first store. I hosted an alcohol training class for all of Delaware City here at the fire hall, which I paid our chief of police $850 to perform. I volunteered and personally paid for the 2019 Delaware City Day Entertainment. I opposed the sale of the public utility and the assets that was sold for $2 million when we had an offer of 3.5 on the table. I suggested that all city leases have a CPI increase so that properties don't fall under market value. I decorated and paid for the holiday decor at the city tree back in 2019, using an all blue theme for in honor of police lives matter too. I was successful in having the American flag lit up at town hall because it was not lit up previously. I saved the city the expense of cutting down the weeds along the canal, as the city was under the impression that they were responsible for the property. I arranged ribbon cuttings for new businesses, and I gave rent relief to our tenants during the COVID crisis, so they can stay in operation. I suggested that city owned land used for private commercial purposes be subject to fees. I created a committee for an exploratory investigation and design of the connector at Fort DuPont in January. That committee was rejected by council. I expressed concerns about the recent turnover at Town Hall. Under this administration, we lost a mayor, a council person, a city manager, a chief of police, and a city solicitor, all without notice. That is concerning to me. I have my concerns about self-serving members on this council whose self-interest will block the future of our city's economic development because of their own needs. I've invested millions of private dollars into the historic district, making 3 historic buildings handicap accessible. I replaced 7 sidewalks along the commercial district so people can have accessibility and they don't fall over broken up sidewalks. Commerce is what Delaware City was founded on. We're not an HOA community. We are a city. You will hear noise. You will hear all kinds of noises in the city. Dogs bark natural. There shouldn't be noise ordinances to prevent your dog from barking or your bird from squawking. This city has always missed the boat to success. This is our opportunity for Fort DuPont to move forward and not derail because of the opinions of a few people in town. When I was elected mayor, I made every effort to be transparent. I was given the duty to select the town manager, in which I brought 3 qualified candidates to the residents and the council for an open interview. Council unanimously picked Cathcart with no employee contract, no benefits, at a salary of $80,000 a year. He lasted here several years and gave proper notice upon his departure. His first order of business for me was to sell the city-owned Sterling building, which was in disrepair and abandoned. And we put it out for public auction so no one would get a sweetheart deal. We were fortunate enough to get the Renault family to invest and restore this gem of a property and put it in first-class condition. It soon became the home of the American Bird Association, which has brought bird watching visitors from all over the country and world. I then created the Mayor's Ball that has created nearly $400,000 in funds for projects in our community, for the promotion for the promotion of the fort, for the operation of public bathrooms, community center repairs, African Union Cemetery funding, playground equipment, and numerous other small projects through the town. Dale and I plan on continuing investing in Delaware City. We're excited about the reopening of the Delaware City Hotel, and we're planning an opening in Halloween of this year. We also would like we're planning a ballroom for the parking lot of Krabby Dick's and plan to submit plans in 2022. We also plan to do major renovations to the post office, and with hopes of keeping the post office, but also bringing back the Robinson Hotel, adding condos or hotel rooms to the top. I understand everyone in Delaware City, not everyone in Delaware City is happy with me or likes me. I may have offended you or a family member or just a friend, just because sometimes I don't have a filter. For that, I apologize. But I can assure you and every single resident and business owner of Delaware City that I would never do nothing to negatively impact the quality of life in Delaware City. I thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve Delaware City, but now it's time to pass the torch because I do not believe people should serve numerous terms on city council. I thank you, and I give the new council my best wishes, and thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Nelson. All right, a couple of quick updates I have this evening. Still talking to the state about dredging down at the municipal dock. They're still moving forward with that as far as having conversations about making that a reality. So that will increase, boat traffic and allow accessibility downtown. There's a call tomorrow with the governor's office on the update with COVID. I'm hoping restrictions will be loosened a little bit. So hopefully in April, we'll be able to have our townwide yard sale, car wash here at the station. And we're also working with the park commission to purchase or pay for 3 large 30-yard dumpsters strategically placed around town for large items for people that may not be able to afford to throw large furniture and stuff like that away. And we're going to partner with Cutting Edge. So if we have handicapped elderly residents that can't physically take their items to the dumpster, he's going to take his loader over there, put it in the bucket of the loader, and dump it in the dumpster that way. So hopefully we'll be able to set a date here soon and make that public for sometime in April, as long as the COVID numbers pretty much stay stable and hopefully continue to come down. In touch with Artesian over the past couple of weeks. They're getting ready to make application with the Corps of Engineers for the cross connector between Delaware City and Fort DuPont to boost up the water pressure. That'll be a big help to mostly everybody in town. Where right now we're averaging 40, 45 PSI. It should get us up around 55, hopefully 60 range. Penalty funds, we had a meeting with Secretary of Denmark, I believe it's on the 26th, to talk about some projects in town that would qualify for penalty funds. One of them John talked about with the charging station. Dave gave an update on some of the drainage issues that we're having. Or anything like that that's tied into an environmental project that we can hopefully facilitate with them. Councilman Saunders, Councilman Buckhay, and a couple other residents agreed to get this charter committee resurrected. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll be able to get that moving forward again and start updating the charter. Couple projects that will be taking place soon is if everybody remembers back in the fall, we were talking about paving section of Hamlin Street between 4th and 5th. Got put on hold because it was too cold out. Looking to get that going hopefully in the first week or 2 of April when the plants start opening back up. So that will be done. And one of the other projects, John actually briefly talked about it. One of the projects that we talked about a year ago before COVID hit was to actually dress up Veterans Point, similar to like we did out here at the Memorial area at the Fire Hall, where put some benches down there, make some pavers for people to sit, and if people want to purchase bricks in memory of people in town that have served in different branches of military, that will actually be an option. So hopefully we'll be able to fund that and move forward with that as the COVID numbers come down and the weather starts getting nicer. I think that is pretty much it for me. Moving into citizens' questions and comments. Any citizens' questions or comments? Dave? Right. I don't know if you want to try.
Sure. Hello?
I knew that was flashing.
It's very soft, so I'm sitting up here.
Yes, on 210 Clinton Street. I just want to express opinions on the two ordinance that were just for first reading tonight. And as I read through them, kind of a word popped in my head was potential. And it's kind of the ever-present but never realized potential of Delaware City. And I'm a historian, so you can go from there. I found this quote, and just something home with me. It's from 1938. It's about Delaware City. It's by the Federal Writers Project. It recognizes that while Delaware City resembles other sleepy waterfront communities that shriveled with the arrival of the railroad, it has never accepted that fate. There is always going on in the vicinity or planning for the future some large undertaking that may restore prosperity. I mean, let that sink in. I mean, that's Delaware City's story. I mean, there's so much potential. You know, 1829, they built this great canal, we would be as big as Philadelphia. 1927, they moved the canal. There goes our potential. You know, we were a great fishing seaport, and then the pollutants of the Delaware River just dried up that business. Potential gone. You know, peace capital, we're the peace capital of the United States, big blight, no more potential, okay? It's done. So fast forward to 2012, and, you know, with the foresight of Governor Markell and Valerie Longhurst from the Cold War, we formed a great idea for a new potential for Delaware City. This is a redevelopment of Fort DuPont. You know, and with that, you know, it's got so much potential to be, you know, near our prosperity and really become a good diamond. You know, so with that, in 2012, we created this very fire hall. You know, groups of people sat around tables and charts and, you know, said, hey, this would be good, we should do this. And out of that came this little generic master plan, which showed marina, it showed restaurants, it showed single family, multifamily, showed a connector bridge. And it was, so it was, it was a great feeling, and everyone agreed this is what it should be. This is what Fort DuPont should be, and we can become one city with this connector and everything there. And in that, like I said, there was multifamily and single family, and it went through our planning commission, and they approved it. You know, it's we all knew at that point that this plan would probably double the population of Delaware City. And that's a good thing. I mean, it gives the potential to attract things that people in the town want to see. They want to see maybe a small grocery store. They want to see restaurants. They want to see maybe an urgent care center. You know, things that the town needs, but doesn't have the density to get those things into the town. You know, years of work went further planning, and finally it broke ground, and you know, things were on the move. And then just in recent months, this whole curse of the unrealization of the potential of Delaware City has reared ugly head. You know, and it got the nails were driven in the coffin of Delaware City's potential once again. And you know, this time it wasn't by an act of God or circumstance out of our control. This time, the nails are basically these ordinances, and the people wielding the hammer is this council right here. You know, the ordinances, cities sort of done paints a rosy picture. Oh, just need a special use permit. You know, it's so rosy, no problem. Come in, special use. You know, it lacks, investors are not going to want to invest in a project where they're investing money up front, where they do it for 5 people up here and based on their own opinions, not even opinions of a public workshop, just their opinions of 5 people, whether this can go through or not. You know, it just goes against what we all talked about, what we all planned, what the state had envisioned for Fort DuPont. You know, what more important, the residents of Fort DuPont wanted. They didn't buy into a Barb's Farm or cultivated better. They bought into a community that has, you know, restaurant, marina, theater. You know, and also with developers not investing in the property, that money used for development of a multi-family project and go to help redevelop and fix up these historic properties, like the theater, like the PX building. You know, without the funding, it's not going to happen. And Fort DuPont is going to have dilapidated buildings once again. You know, so I think we're going to try to just kind of really look at what you're doing for the future. You know, and Redondo had said that there's no representation, and there is. I mean, the legislation is written that there's 4 members of Delaware City that represent Delaware City on the board. You know, and that's something that should come before, and I'm one of those. I mean, it should come before me if you have issues. It's not, it's disheartening to me. And the second ordinance, I mean, it's jumbled with a lot of stuff in there. The one thing I wanted to make comment was it's a riparian buffer area, which, in my opinion, I mean, I did study engineering, but that was like in the 1980s, so. But, it's gonna kill the whole marina district. I mean, it's going to kill the marina district. And I would hope, I mean, it sounds very eco-friendly, you want to, create more buffer from the waterways. But I hope that the intention of this was that, and not that the intention was from somebody not having competition for their own business, their own marina. So, I mean, I guess what I want to say is, I mean, I live in the city, I love this city, and to see the better of the city, personal agendas have to be placed aside. And only then, we can see the future and get that potential realized and really make this into a diamond. Not just a diamond in a rough, make it into a diamond. So that's all I gotta say. Thank you.
Next level. Any other citizens' comments? Tim?
Since COVID-19 started, my wife and I have taken what we call sanity rides every Friday. We get out of the car and just go someplace. We observe distances and masks and all that, so we can feel ourselves considerably safe. What I have noticed on these rides is that all up and down this coast, there are small towns that are stagnating and dying because they lack the vision to look forward and not make decisions as to what was best for their future. They decided to sit stagnant, and in that process, they die. Towns where the new businesses were allowed to move out on the main highway, and the center of town died. You can go anywhere within 50 miles, see any town where this has occurred. We have to be careful how we deal with this restricting, of 40 Pond. Because like Dale said, it represents a future that only comes on every once in a while. And if we're not careful about it, we can stun it to the point where we stagnate ourselves. And that's the death of the town. And that's a shame. Because I love, like Dale and everybody else, I love this town. I came here because I love this town. And I love the idea. I worked 3 years driving 150 miles a day commuting because I like living here the way I felt when I got here. So I think all in all, we have to be careful what we wish for. Because if we make it too hard for somebody to do business in this town, to create something in this town, to do anything that betters this town, we're going to be doing ourselves a disservice. Thank you.
Anybody else? Citizens' comments. Anybody else? Citizens' comments.
Yeah.
Yes,
I bought my house here, almost 6 years ago.
I'm sorry, could you just state your name and address, please?
Mike Juan, I live at 14.
Okay, thank you.
And I hadn't even heard about the master plan. I bought the house and it was turned down, pretty much. But it actually inspired me to kind of take a course change, by the way. And I was working with cybersecurity when I got here 2 years ago. I left that behind. I was doing watchmaking, was building the goal quickly. We're up the watchmaking or watch repair shop here in Delaware City. Just got ready to graduate. I'm a student at the Veteran Watchmaking Edition down in Odessa. And yeah, I hope that those ordinances, executed well. I hope it's just about preserving the quality of what we do end up with. But I'm hopeful.
All right. Anybody else? Citizens' comment. Okay, final call, citizens' comment. Tim, question.
So what are we doing on the election?
I'm going to defer to Bill on the election, question on our annual election.
What board of electors will have an issue?
Regardless of last year.
Actually, there was a question how we're gonna handle the council positions with the 2-year and the 1-year seats.
So basically, there are 3 candidates for 3 positions. And when there's essentially an uncontested election, then essentially they're all put in place. But we have one little nuance here that's thrown a little bit of a wrinkle into it. There are 2 2-year seats and 1 1-year seat. So essentially, we need to hear back from the 3 candidates as to whether or not one of them would apply for the 1-year seat so that we could avoid having an election. But literally, if all 3 candidates wanted a 2-year seat, then there's going to be an election. And what happens under the code actually says this is that 2 high vote getters a 2-year seat, and a 3rd high vote getter is a 1-year seat.
Okay, but we're running out of time. And the board of electors and new office have to go to state training before the election takes place up there.
We hope to have some answer next day or so. We had to reach out to the election commissioner, because we went to the county election board and nobody could give us an answer. Finally, we got an answer from the election commissioner.
Final call for citizens' comments. If none, entertain a motion to adjourn. There's a second. Please adjourn.
You know.
Here you go. Good riddance. I'm sure. I'm sorry to see what's happening in the city.
I am really so disappointed. I can't wait to be done with Randall.
Thanks for all your service on council and all that.
That's the move. I'd love to know, because there's somebody that like that stuff anyway, but I'm sure it'd be a good thing for everybody else. The state is for. Oh, well, that's. They would probably enjoy it. That's what they, if they kept to it back, they would charge them this one, probably. Yeah, but we don't have any out there. It's always private.
At least 50 people in cars around there at 2:35 in the morning. And check, yeah, they were getting drugs out of the car and, listening to scammers, but they knew.
You know, it's not 50 minutes before they show up.
They won't gather tonight. So.
Yeah, so that's.
Well, this is pretty. You know what I want to see? I want to see that everybody.